Imagine walking into the investment firm where Grant, my son-in-law, worked. He saw me and erupted in mocking laughter. "Security, please escort this gentleman out. He's clearly lost." He gestured theatrically to his colleagues, inviting them to witness my humiliation. But just then, the managing partner emerged from his office, cast a withering glance at Grant, and declared, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, "Mr. Dunham, your $15 million portfolio transfer is approved. And you, clean out your desk." Grant's arrogance had sealed the end of his gilded career. But this was just the opening act. Before I continue, please subscribe to Shattered Vengeance, and let me know in the comments what Canadian city you're watching from. The relentless November rain lashed against the windshield of my aging Subaru as I parked across the street from the Dunham Bennett residence in Oakville. His gleaming Mercedes GLE, a monument to excess, sat prominently in the driveway, defying the dreary weather. I had driven from my modest but comfortable one-bedroom apartment in Burlington, overlooking the serene expanse of the lake. Simple, quiet, exactly what I needed. Peering through the large front window, I detected movement. My grandson, Noah, all of 8 years old, pressed his face against the glass, waving enthusiastically. His older sister, Lily, 10, soon joined him. I returned their wave, my heart twisting as I noticed Noah's inadequate light jacket, woefully unsuitable for a November chill, and Lily's worn, scuffed shoes. Before I could reach the front door, it swung open, revealing Eric Dunham, my son-in-law, standing there impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, still in his work attire, despite being home. "Evan, you're early. Traffic must have been light today." "It was fine." I stepped inside, shaking off the persistent rain. "Let me take that." He reached for my worn jacket, but his eyes were already scanning my attire. The comfortable jeans, the simple flannel shirt, and the well-worn 15-year-old work boots. He saw me as a relic, a has-been. "Kayla is still putting the finishing touches on dinner. Make yourself comfortable in the living room." The air inside was thick with the aroma of roasted chicken, mingled with an overly strong, artificial scent. Expensive candles, no doubt. Everything in this house screamed unnecessary extravagance, a desperate attempt to project an image of success. The furniture, deliberately modern, seemed designed more for impressing guests than providing comfort. Abstract art, likely not Kayla's choice, adorned the walls. Kayla appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a tea towel. My daughter, a woman of 34, looked somehow older than her years, with dark circles under her tired eyes. "Dad, you made it." She hugged me briefly, a perfunctory gesture as Eric strategically positioned himself beside her, a united front against the world. "Wouldn't miss it, sweetheart." We gathered for dinner. Eric, predictably, took the head of the table, completely disregarding my presence. The children sat across from me, unnaturally quiet and observant, their young faces betraying an awareness of the unspoken tensions in the house, the constant need to tread carefully. Eric poured himself a generous glass of wine, pointedly not offering me any. "So, Evan, how's retirement treating you? Must be a bit of an adjustment after the mill, eh?" I had owned and managed Grant Lawson Timber Processing for 42 years, painstakingly building it from the ground up, starting in 1981, and finally selling it 18 months ago for a considerable $31 million. But Eric conveniently preferred his own, simplified version of my history, one that painted me as a simple, blue-collar worker. "It suits me just fine. A man needs purpose. I couldn't do it." He meticulously cut into his steak, his movements precise and calculated. "Speaking of purpose, did you happen to notice the Mercedes outside? GLE 450, just picked it up last week. Thornhill Capital expects a certain image, you understand?" Kayla offered a weak, forced smile into her wine glass. "That's quite an investment," I remarked carefully, choosing my words. "Investment? Precisely. You understand business, Evan. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. Not everyone gets that, though." He flashed a condescending glance at my flannel shirt. Lily bravely attempted to steer the conversation, asking about my week, but Eric quickly steamrolled over her. "The GLE has a twin-turbo inline-six, 0 to 100 inches 5.9 seconds. Though, I doubt you'd appreciate that, coming from a Subaru. It gets me where I need to go. Practical. That's the word for it. Practical. He said it as if it were a clinical diagnosis, a sign of some inherent deficiency. The meal continued in this vein, each topic carefully chosen and deployed as a referendum on worth, status, and material possessions. When Noah, in his innocent enthusiasm, started to ask about fishing, Eric cut him off mid-sentence. Evan doesn't have time for hobbies anymore. Retirement's expensive, right? Fixed income, gotta watch every dollar. I watched Kayla dutifully refill his wine glass, an automatic, almost unconscious gesture. She'd become attuned to his rhythms, his unspoken demands. This wasn't the same daughter who used to passionately argue philosophy with me over breakfast, who questioned everything, who dreamed of studying environmental science and saving the planet. She met Eric at university, and slowly, imperceptibly, she had transformed into someone else. Actually, I interjected, choosing my moment carefully, I was thinking about Noah's hockey. Kayla mentioned the registration fees. Noah looked up, his eyes sparkling with a flicker of hope. I'd be happy to help with the registration, maybe even get him some new equipment. Eric slammed his fork down on the plate with deliberate force. We provide for our children. We don't need handouts. It's not a handout, it's help from their grandfather. We don't need charity from someone living in a one-bedroom apartment, scraping by on a pension. This conversation is over. His voice turned cold, sharp, and precise, like a honed blade. Kayla's fork paused momentarily, then resumed its movement. No defense, no intervention, no sign that she disagreed with his assessment of me. After dinner, I requested to see the children's rooms. Lily's desk had a broken drawer handle, crudely taped together with masking tape. In Noah's closet, I noticed his winter boots, the soles visibly separating from the worn leather. The master bedroom door stood ajar. I caught a glimpse of the opulent California king bed, adorned with pristine white linens, a $1,200 price tag still visible on the corner of the comforter. Lily, sensing my disapproval, whispered, "Grandpa, do you like Dad's car? It's very nice, sweetheart. Dad says we might get new winter coats next month. After his bonus." She tugged nervously at her thin jacket. "These still fit, though." I found Eric in the living room, mindlessly scrolling through his phone. "Thank you for dinner. I'll call about visiting again soon. Kayla will let you know when we're free. We're busy, you know? Not everyone has endless free time." He didn't even bother to look up from his screen. "I'd like to spend more time with my grandchildren. We'll see. Good night." He dismissed me with a wave of his hand, signaling the end of the conversation. The drive back to Burlington took approximately 30 minutes through rain-slicked streets, the city lights blurring in the downpour. My apartment greeted me like an old friend. Familiar, quiet, small, but impeccably organized. I made a cup of tea and sat down at my desk, the only sound the gentle hum of the refrigerator. My banking app loaded slowly, revealing a balance of $28,347,234.67. I had indeed sold Grant Lawson Timber 18 months ago. The mill, my life's work, had provided handsomely for my future. No one knew the real number, not even Kayla. She probably assumed maybe $1 million. Eric thought even less of me, seeing only the trappings of a modest retirement. I closed the laptop and gazed at the framed photograph on my desk. Grant Lawson Timber's grand opening day in 1981. I was a much younger man then, just 32, standing proudly beside the first processing line I had designed myself, wearing my father's watch, building something tangible, something real. They thought that made me weak, a simpleton. Eric saw the apartment and immediately jumped to the conclusion of poverty. Kayla had long since stopped asking about my finances, intimidated, perhaps, by Eric's constant boasting. I opened a document on my laptop, titled Family Observations, November 2024, and began to type, children's clothing, luxury bedroom, Eric's spending habits, the Mercedes timing, Tomorrow, I'd observe even more carefully, not with anger or resentment, but with cold, calculated precision. Eric had gravely miscalculated, assuming I was finished, powerless, irrelevant. I saved the document, created a password-protected folder, and went to bed, my mind already racing with possibilities. 3 days later, I sat at my laptop, the pale morning light illuminating the screen. My coffee had long since gone cold, forgotten. I'd been meticulously researching private investigators since 6 a.m., poring over reviews, checking credentials, narrowing down the field. I finally settled on 3 promising candidates. The third one on my list, Adam Kowalski, agreed to meet me that afternoon in Mississauga. He arrived promptly, a man in his mid-50 seconds, with neatly combed gray hair and unremarkable clothes. He ordered black coffee and sat down without preamble, his eyes sharp and assessing. "You mentioned it was family-related. I need information about my son-in-law. His behavior has changed recently. My daughter seems different. I need facts, hard evidence. What specifically concerns you? He's spending far beyond his means, while his children are forced to wear worn-out clothes. Either he's hiding income, or he's drowning in debt, or both." Kowalski pulled out a small notebook and a pen. 2 weeks, full surveillance, comprehensive background check, $4,500. I'll need his schedule, vehicle details, workplace address. I had anticipated this. I'd prepared everything meticulously. Eric's typical work hours, the Mercedes license plate number, his daily routine, the names of his known associates. I slid the neatly typed paper across the table. Half now, half upon delivery of the final report. Daily updates, but nothing in writing until the end. Cash preferred for the initial deposit. I handed him a sealed envelope containing $2,500 in cash. We shook hands, a silent agreement sealing our arrangement. He left first, disappearing into the afternoon crowd. The next 2 weeks crawled by with agonizing slowness. Kowalski sent brief, cryptic text messages. Asterisk, subject at workplace. Lunch meeting observed. Evening routine monitored. Asterisk. Each message ratcheted up my anxiety, fueling my growing unease. 10 days after hiring him, Kowalski called. "We should meet." Same location, 2 p.m. The folder he slid across the table was thick and heavy, filled with photographs, each meticulously time-stamped. They showed Eric with a younger woman, in her mid-20 seconds, professionally dressed, at various restaurants and hotels, his hand casually placed on her back, her fingers lightly touching his arm. The casual intimacy spoke volumes. Jenna Morales, junior analyst at his firm. Based on the observed patterns, I'd estimate the affair has been going on for approximately 6 months. I studied each photograph methodically, forcing myself to remain calm, to suppress the rising tide of anger. "You're certain these photographs are authentic? That they haven't been altered in any way?" Restaurants, hotels, clear evidence of intimacy. He consistently uses a separate credit card for these outings. One she doesn't see, a different card from the one he uses for family purchases. Kowalski produced a second set of documents, personal loans taken out under his name, totaling $75,000 borrowed in the past year. Combined with your daughter's existing mortgage and vehicle loans, the total family debt is hovering around $420,000. I absorbed this information carefully, methodically, trying to piece together the whole picture. Does Kayla know about any of this? Nothing reflecting these debts appears in any joint accounts. He's meticulously managing the payments separately, which suggests either hidden income or he's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Your professional assessment? Living far beyond his means to support 2 separate lifestyles. The math simply doesn't work in the long term. One missed payment, one unexpected expense, and the whole house of cards collapses. I paid him the remaining $2,200 in cash, gathered the incriminating folder, and drove home. My mind churning with possibilities. But I knew I needed first-hand confirmation, something beyond the investigator's report, something irrefutable. The following Tuesday, I positioned myself at the bar of a trendy restaurant Kowalski had documented, arriving at 11:30, ordering a coffee, and strategically choosing a seat with a clear view of the dining room. Eric arrived promptly at 12:15 with Melissa, his hand possessively on her back, the very same gesture he used with Kayla, the practiced familiarity of a seasoned player. He pulled out her chair with practiced grace, ordered a bottle of expensive wine, without even glancing at the price list. I discreetly photographed them, capturing his wedding ring glinting in the soft light as his fingers intertwined with hers across the crisp white tablecloth. The wine alone cost $120. I saw the waiter's deferential presentation, The way Eric effortlessly commanded attention, this man was recklessly plunging his family into debt, all for the sake of his own inflated ego and a tawdry extramarital affair. I left before they noticed me, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. That evening, I spread everything across my desk, transforming my small apartment into a makeshift war room. The investigators' detailed reports, my own supplementary photographs, the damning financial data, the meticulously researched background information. I constructed a timeline, painstakingly tracking the progression of events. The affair began approximately 6 months ago. The accumulation of debt accelerated 4 months ago. The extravagant purchase of the Mercedes 1 month ago. The pattern was undeniably mathematical, a precise equation of deception and greed. I turned my attention to Thornhill Capital Management, researching their client portfolio, their senior managing partners, their carefully cultivated reputation for discretion and exclusivity. I found it buried deep within their client testimonials on their website. They specialized in portfolio management for high net worth individuals, with a minimum investment requirement of $10 million. What if a prospective new client, possessing a substantial portfolio, were to express a strong desire to transfer their assets, insisting on working directly with senior management, bypassing the usual channels? What if that client happened to be me? I began drafting an email to Gregory Thornhill, the firm's founding partner, a man known for his shrewdness and unwavering commitment to client service. I adopted a tone of professional detachment, emphasizing the size of the prospective portfolio, the need for utterly discreet management, and the immediate availability of substantial liquid assets. The request was for a private consultation with senior leadership, making no mention of Eric Dunham, offering not even a hint of a family connection. I wrote and rewrote the email for 2 agonizing hours, agonizing over every word, crafting the perfect message. Around 9 p.m., I called Kayla, ostensibly for a brief check-in, to see how she was doing. "Just calling to see how you're doing, sweetheart." Her voice sounded distant, strained. "Fine, Dad. Just busy with the kids' schedules. Everything okay? You seem stressed." The defensiveness was immediate, an ingrained response. "Everything's fine. Eric's working hard, as always. We're fine. If you ever need anything, I have to go. I'll talk to you soon." And with that, she hung up. I sat alone in the encroaching darkness, the only light emanating from the laptop screen, illuminating the desk and the incriminating evidence spread across it. The carefully crafted email to Gregory Thornhill remained complete, but unsent. I would wait until morning, I decided, to give it that final polish. On my desk, I meticulously arranged the gathered materials: Kowalski's final investigative report, my supplementary photographs, the detailed financial analysis, the exhaustive firm research. Beside them, I placed a handwritten list, titled simply, Objectives. Expose Eric Dunham professionally, protect Kayla and the grandchildren financially, secure the grandchildren's future, and, above all, not revenge. I saved everything to an encrypted folder, then created a physical backup, storing it in the locked drawer where I kept my father's cherished watch and the original documents pertaining to the sale of my business. Tomorrow morning, I would send the email, setting the final act in motion. Timing, as I had learned over the course of 42 years in business, was everything. My finger hovered over the trackpad, then deliberately moved to the Save Draft button. I'd spent a lifetime learning the virtues of patience, of careful planning, of waiting for the opportune moment to strike. But the foundation was now firmly in place. The research was complete, the strategic approach mapped out with meticulous precision. Eric thought he knew who I was. A simple, retired mill owner, diminished, irrelevant. He was about to learn the profound difference between downsizing and strategic positioning. The cursor hovered over the contact form on Thornhill Capital's website. Wednesday morning, 9:17 a.m. I'd composed the message 3 separate times, carefully refining each word, scrutinizing every phrase, ensuring that it conveyed the exact message I intended. I typed the carefully chosen name into the form, Richard Morrison, The email address I had created yesterday, specifically for this purpose, loaded automatically, subject line, Portfolio Management Inquiry, Confidential transfer. Asterisk. The carefully worded message referenced a strong interest in discretionary wealth management, specifically highlighting the recent sale proceeds from a successful business, emphasizing the critical need for absolutely confidential handling, making no direct mention of Eric Dunham, and offering not even the slightest hint of a family connection. I read it through 3 more times, obsessively checking for any inadvertently identifying details, any subtle clues that might betray my true intentions. Satisfied that it was perfect, I deliberately moved the cursor to the send button. The response arrived with surprising speed at 2:43 that afternoon. A personal reply from Gregory Thornhill himself, the founding partner of the firm. Yes, they routinely manage portfolios of this magnitude, he assured me. Thornhill even included his direct office line and suggested a private consultation away from the typical client meeting areas, specifically designed for individuals who preferred absolute discretion and confidentiality. I easily read between the carefully crafted lines. Thornhill recognized serious money, a whale of a client, and wanted to handle this personally, completely bypassing the regular staff structure. Perfect. I waited a deliberately casual 2 hours before crafting my reply, keeping it concise and to the point. Asterisk, preferred meeting with senior management directly. Available this week. Cash position ready for immediate transfer. Asterisk. His response arrived within a blistering 30 minutes. Asterisk. Tomorrow afternoon. Private office meeting. Please bring identification for paperwork preparation. Asterisk. I spent the evening meticulously preparing for the meeting, visiting my bank and obtaining a bank draft for $2 million, payable to Thornhill Capital Management, purchasing a sleek, new leather portfolio, carefully selecting the clothing I would wear the following day. Thursday afternoon, I drove to the firm's prestigious office tower in downtown Toronto, deliberately parking 2 blocks away from the building, adding an extra layer of anonymity to my arrival. The brisk walk took 8 minutes, allowing me to compose myself, to mentally rehearse the upcoming encounter. I entered through the grand main lobby, the air thick with hushed tones and the scent of expensive cologne. The impeccably dressed receptionist was expecting me, offered a warm, practiced smile, and escorted me directly to Thornhill's private office on the 23rd floor. The expansive space offered breathtaking panoramic views of the city through floor-to-ceiling glass windows. Thornhill rose from behind his large desk to greet me, offering a warm cup of coffee, gesturing towards the plush leather chairs arranged in a seating area. Through the clear glass partition separating his office from the main floor, I could clearly see Eric Dunham at his desk, animatedly talking to a client, appearing confident and in his element. Thornhill began the standard wealth management pitch, smoothly outlining the firm's various services and strategies. I cut him off mid-sentence. Mr. Thornhill, I've already done my research. Your firm has been successfully managing high-net-worth portfolios for 23 years. I'm prepared to make this simple for both of us. His eyebrows rose slightly, intrigued. You've certainly done your homework, Mr. Morrison. I reached inside my jacket, carefully removed the sealed envelope, and slid it across his highly polished desk. I'm prepared to transfer $2 million today as an initial deposit, with the remaining $13 million to follow within 30 days. But I do have certain conditions. Thornhill opened the envelope, quickly examining the bank draft. His carefully controlled expression shifted subtly, a flicker of surprise and, perhaps, a hint of avarice. I'm listening, Mr. Morrison. This arrangement stays strictly between us, at least until the full transfer is completed. No staff involvement whatsoever until I'm ready. He hesitated momentarily, a flicker of doubt crossing his features. That's rather unusual, Mr. Morrison. May I ask why? I place a high value on privacy. Too many substantial wealth transfers become public knowledge almost immediately. With staff members making assumptions, spreading gossip, I prefer to make my decisions quietly and then execute them publicly when I'm ready. Thornhill studied me intently, his gaze unwavering, then nodded slowly, as if he had finally understood something fundamental about my character. And the second condition, Mr. Morrison? I want to personally finalize the full transfer during normal business hours, unannounced, without alerting your staff in advance. I want to experience the authentic firm environment to see how things operate on a daily basis. His expression suggested a mix of confusion and growing curiosity, but he was, after all, looking at the potential of $15 million in newly acquired assets for his firm. That can certainly be arranged, Mr. Morrison. We spent the next 40 minutes immersed in paperwork, meticulously completing the necessary documentation, signing the various agreements. As the meeting drew to a close, the conversation turned more casual, almost friendly. Thornhill mentioned his deep pride in his team, highlighting their professionalism and dedication. I kept my voice deliberately casual, almost nonchalant. Excellent operation you have here, Mr. Thornhill. My son-in-law actually works here. Eric Dunham. Thornhill's expression shifted subtly, his eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly, then settling into a pose of careful neutrality. Eric Dunham. Yes, he's one of our investment advisors, a valuable member of our team, family by marriage, you see. We don't discuss business much, though. I prefer to keep family and finances strictly separate. I see, Mr. Morrison. I stood, gathering my leather portfolio. It'll be interesting to see his reaction when I finalize the transfer. I haven't mentioned my interest in portfolio management to my family, so it should be quite a surprise to him. Thornhill's face betrayed a growing understanding, a dawning realization that this was not a simple business transaction, that there were complex family dynamics at play. But the contract was signed, the initial deposit made, the money secured. He extended his hand, a gesture of finality and agreement. We'll call you 8 hours before the finalization, Mr. Morrison. I left through the main lobby, walked back to the parking garage, the rain having subsided, a faint glimmer of sunlight breaking through the clouds. Only when I was safely seated alone in the Subaru, away from prying eyes, did I allow the accumulated tension to finally release. 4 long weeks until Eric would discover that his father-in-law wasn't the powerless, diminished retiree he so readily dismissed. 4 weeks until the truth would finally be revealed, shattering his carefully constructed illusion. The phone rang at precisely 10 to 12 the following Thursday morning. Gregory Thornhill's voice, smooth and professional, filled my ear. Mr. Morrison, your account transfer is now complete. When would you prefer to finalize the necessary paperwork? I glanced at the clock on the wall, my pulse quickening slightly. I'll be there within the hour. Excellent, Mr. Morrison. Everything will be prepared for your review. After hanging up the phone, I moved deliberately through my final preparations, removing my decent, everyday watch and replacing it with a cheap, digital one I had purchased years ago. I carefully selected my oldest, most faded jeans, a worn and patched work jacket, scuffed and well-worn boots. I studied my reflection critically in the mirror, ensuring I presented the perfect image of a modest, unassuming retiree, the antithesis of Eric Dunham's carefully cultivated image of success. The drive to downtown Toronto took approximately 40 minutes. The traffic surprisingly light. I pulled the Subaru into the visitor parking garage, no longer bothering to conceal my presence, no longer attempting to hide in the shadows. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls of the lobby, I spotted Eric near the conference room, engaged in an animated conversation with a group of clients, his back to the entrance. I entered the building, walked past the receptionist without pausing, and headed towards the bank of elevators. Eric, glancing over his shoulder, caught sight of me, did a double take, his expression shifting rapidly from initial confusion to irritation, and finally, to undisguised embarrassment. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the 23rd floor, and waited as the doors silently closed. When the doors reopened, I walked with deliberate purpose directly to Thornhill's private office. The glass-walled conference room, strategically located near the elevators, was clearly visible to the entire floor, offering an unobstructed view of everything transpiring within. Thornhill stood as I entered, extending his hand in greeting. Mr. Morrison, right on time, please, let's finalize everything. He led me into the conference room, his movements brisk and efficient. Eric, drawn by the commotion, had followed me, his face a mask of growing confusion and unease. Thornhill spread the documents across the large conference table, smoothing them with his hand. $15 million portfolio transfer, all documentation has been meticulously prepared. If you could just review and sign here. Eric's face drained of color, his eyes wide with disbelief. Thornhill continued, addressing me directly but speaking loudly enough to ensure that Eric could clearly hear every word. Your account will be managed at our platinum tier, Mr. Morrison. with direct access to senior partnership and quarterly reviews, ensuring that your investment goals are always our top priority. I began signing the documents, my hand steady, my signature precise. Eric stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. Evan, what are you doing here? I looked up, adopting an expression of studied neutrality. Finalizing my portfolio transfer. You're what? Eric stammered, his composure crumbling. Thornhill intervened smoothly, his voice cold and professional. Mr. Morrison is in the process of transferring $15 million to our management, Mr. Dunham, one of our most substantial new clients this quarter. Eric's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came out. Other staff members, drawn by the unusual scene, were now openly watching. $15 million? Eric's voice came out strangled, barely audible. You don't have $15 million? Evan, you live in a one-bedroom apartment. You drive a Subaru. I do live in a one-bedroom apartment, I said calmly, maintaining eye contact. And I do drive a Subaru. However, neither of those facts has any bearing whatsoever on my net worth. Thornhill's expression suggested he was finally piecing together the complex family dynamics at play, the web of deception and misjudgment. Mr. Patterson, perhaps we should discuss this matter privately. But Eric was no longer listening, his gaze fixed on me, his face contorted with disbelief and anger. His voice rose, trembling with indignation. This is impossible. You used to work at a mill, for God's sake. You're retired. You're on a fixed income. I own the mill, I corrected him quietly, and I sold it 18 months ago for $31 million. The entire office had fallen into complete silence, every eye fixed on our unfolding drama. Eric spun around abruptly, facing Thornhill, his face a mask of desperation. There must be some mistake. This is my father-in-law. He's one of our most valued new clients, Mr. Dunham, Thornhill finished coldly. And you're currently disrupting a highly confidential account finalization. I continued signing the documents, my hands still steady, my movements deliberate and unhurried. Eric's face cycled through a kaleidoscope of emotions, from disbelief to outrage to a dawning realization of the catastrophic consequences of his actions. Evan, we should talk. Family should discuss these things. Maybe I could help you manage it. No, I said simply, my voice firm and unwavering. But I'm family, Evan. I could advise you. I could protect your investments. You've already given me plenty of advice, Eric, I retorted, the sarcasm dripping from my voice. About my apartment, my car, my supposed fixed income. I don't require any additional guidance from you, thank you very much. Thornhill's jaw tightened visibly, his patience clearly wearing thin. Eric tried a different tack, his voice softening, almost pleading. The children, Kayla, we could really use. I set down the pen, looked directly at him, my eyes hard. The children need winter coats, Eric. Kayla needs a husband who doesn't spend $95,000 on a car while his daughter's shoes have holes in them. Those things would be far more useful than your unsolicited financial advice. Someone in the office coughed nervously, breaking the suffocating silence. Eric's face flushed a deep, angry red. You have no right, he hissed, his voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. I have every right, Eric, I said quietly, but with steel in my voice. I'm their grandfather, and I'm done watching you prioritize your own ego and your insatiable need for status over their basic needs. I turned to Thornhill, ignoring Eric completely. Are we finished here, Mr. Thornhill? Just one more signature. Mr. Morrison. He slid the final document across the table. I signed it, dated it, and pushed it back towards him. Thornhill gathered the signed papers, his expression unreadable. Welcome to Thornhill Capital, Mr. Morrison. We'll schedule your first quarterly review for March. He stood, extended his hand, a formality. We shook. Then Thornhill turned to Eric, his voice icy. Mr. Patterson, your employment with Thornhill Capital is terminated, effective immediately. HR will contact you regarding your final paycheck. Eric's face registered a look of pure horror, a complete and utter devastation. I gathered my portfolio and walked deliberately towards the elevator, leaving the wreckage behind me. Behind me, I heard Thornhill's voice, cold and unforgiving. Mr. Dunham, my office. Now, the elevator doors closed, mercifully obscuring Eric's stricken face from view. From the parking garage, I sat alone in the Subaru for 3 minutes, slowly processing everything that had just transpired, replaying the scene in my mind, reliving the confrontation. Then, I started the engine and drove to Kayla's house. The ostentatious Mercedes still sat in the driveway, a monument to misplaced priorities. Kayla answered the door, looking confused. "Dad, what are you doing here? It's Thursday afternoon. We need to talk, sweetheart. Can I come in?" She stepped aside silently, allowing me to enter. I walked directly to the kitchen table, sat down heavily. "Eric will be home soon. He got a call from work." Sounded upset. "I know, Kayla. Sit down." She sat slowly, her eyes searching my face, trying to decipher the meaning behind my unexpected visit. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo gallery, and turned the screen towards her. The first image showed Eric and Melissa at an intimate outdoor cafe, his hand possessively covering hers. Kayla stared at the image, her face remaining still, almost blank. I swiped to the next photo. Another restaurant, another cozy setting, Eric's arm draped casually around Melissa's shoulders. "How long?" Her voice was barely audible, a mere whisper. "About 6 months, Kayla. That's Jenna Morales. She works at his firm." I swiped again. The entrance to a luxury hotel. The timestamp was clearly visible. Kayla's hands began to tremble, her composure finally cracking. She pulled the phone closer, swiped through the remaining images, her breath catching in her throat. "I hired an investigator, Kayla. I'm sorry, but I had to know." The documents revealed that he had taken out $75,000 in loans and credit card charges without her consent. I emphasized that the family's total debt amounted to $420,000 and that he had been spending money on another woman while denying the children new coats. Kayla Bennett stared intently at the documents, which displayed unfamiliar numbers, dates, and accounts. Continuing, "I mentioned that earlier that morning, I had transferred $15 million to Thornhill Capital, an act that led to Eric Dunham's dismissal after he witnessed the finalization of the paperwork in front of his colleagues." Her head snapped up in disbelief. I clarified that his actions were the cause of his termination. I merely ceased to maintain the facade he had created. I disclosed that I had been wealthy all along, having sold my business 18 months prior for $31 million, and had chosen to live modestly. Eric Dunham had jumped to conclusions, and I allowed him to do so. Kayla Bennett's face crumpled with emotion. I explained that I had allowed them to believe I was struggling and had let him mock me because I needed to understand his true character and the person she had become with him, and I wanted her to see it as well. She abruptly stood and began pacing the kitchen, overwhelmed by the revelation. As the front door opened, Eric Dunham appeared carrying a cardboard box. His tie loosened and his face flushed. Upon seeing me, he stopped, his voice trembling as he accused me of ruining his career. I calmly responded that he was responsible for his own downfall. I had only set the stage. He then turned to Kayla Bennett, demanding to know if I had told her what he had done. She quietly replied that I had shown her the photographs of him with Melissa. Eric Dunham paled, attempting to explain that the images were taken out of context. Kayla Bennett stated that for 6 months, while they couldn't afford coats for the children, and while he purchased a $95,000 car. "I can explain." "Get out," she said, her voice low and dangerous. Eric Dunham stared at her, bewildered. "This is my house. It's our house, Eric, and I want you to leave now." He looked from me back to Kayla Bennett, his eyes pleading. "You're choosing him over me? After what he did, I'm choosing truth over lies. I'm choosing my children over your ego. Leave, Eric." Eric Dunham stood frozen, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. He then grabbed his car keys from the counter and walked out without another word. The Mercedes roared to life in the driveway, reversed too fast, and sped away down the street, disappearing into the distance. Kayla Bennett sank into a chair, put her face in her hands, and began to sob uncontrollably. I moved around the table, put my hand on her shoulder, offering comfort, offering support. "I know this hurts, sweetheart, but you and the children will be okay. I promise." She looked up, her face streaked with tears, her eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. "How, Dad? How will we be okay?" "Because you're stronger." Her eyes, they held a depth of emotion I couldn't quite decipher. The clock ticked on, each second a heavy beat in the silence. "The children will be home from school in an hour," I said, the words feeling inadequate. "What do you want to tell them? The unvarnished truth, raw and painful? Or a version softened by compassion? A narrative they can grasp? That their dad made some bad choices, lost his way. That grandpa's here, helping us pick up the pieces, navigate this storm. That sounds right," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. She turned to me then, her gaze searching, probing. "Really?" she breathed, her eyes widening slightly. "You really have $31 million?" "I do. And you've been living in that tiny apartment? By choice?" "After your mother died, I realized. Stuff doesn't matter much, Kayla. Not in the grand scheme of things. People do. Making a difference, leaving a positive mark, that's what gives life meaning. The money's just a tool, a means to an end, not the end itself." I don't know how to feel about any of this," she confessed, her voice laced with confusion. "That's okay. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just know that you're not alone. You have me." 6 weeks later, the sterile environment of the Milton family courtroom felt heavy with anticipation. Kayla Bennett sat at the plaintiff's table, a picture of quiet strength, with her legal representative, the sharp and composed Amanda Chen. Across the aisle, Eric Dunham sat awkwardly in a borrowed suit, looking every bit the disgraced man he was. Beside him sat a court-appointed representative, a stark reminder of his financial ruin. He had attempted to hire legal counsel, but the funds simply weren't there. The divorce proceedings had moved with surprising speed, the weight of the evidence proving insurmountable. Adultery, a labyrinth of financial deceit, and a mountain of concealed debt. Judge Morrison, a woman known for her no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the documents with a practiced eye. "This is remarkably straightforward, given the circumstances," she stated, her voice resonating in the hushed courtroom. Amanda Chen rose to her feet, her voice clear and confident. "Your Honor, my client seeks primary custody of the children, child support proportional to the respondent's current income, and an equitable division of assets, specifically excluding the respondent's undisclosed debts, which were incurred without my client's knowledge or consent." Eric Dunham's representative, a young man visibly out of his depth, stood hesitantly. "Your Honor, my client requests shared custody of the children and disputes the proposed asset division." Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow, her expression skeptical. "On what grounds?" "My client believes external influence from the maternal grandfather has unfairly swayed the proceedings, poisoning the well, so to speak." "Stop," Judge Morrison commanded, holding up a hand. "Unless you can demonstrate that Mr. Dan, Evan Mitchell Grant Lawson's financial support directly constitutes marital property. His involvement, or lack thereof, is irrelevant to these proceedings. I suggest you focus on the facts at hand." She reviewed the documents again, her gaze unwavering. "Primary custody to petitioner Kayla Bennett Patterson. Respondent granted standard visitation rights, as outlined in the agreed-upon schedule. Child support set at $1,800 monthly, based on the respondent's current, verifiable income. Marital home, awarded to the petitioner, free and clear of any encumbrances. Respondent's separate debts remain his sole responsibility." The gavel fell, its sharp rap echoing through the room, signaling the end of a chapter. Outside the courthouse, Kayla Bennett stood bathed in the pale December sunlight. It was the first time I'd seen her truly smile in what felt like an eternity. "It's over," she said, a sense of relief washing over her. "The legal part is, the rest, that takes time. Thank you, Dad, for everything. You made this possible. You did this, sweetheart. You made the hard choice to walk away, to protect yourself and your children. I just provided some information, shed some light on the situation." She hugged me properly then. A genuine embrace, not the quick, obligatory hugs of recent months. It was a hug that spoke volumes, a hug filled with gratitude and love. 3 months later, I found myself at Kayla Bennett's house, assisting Noah Carter with his math homework at the kitchen table. Lily Parker sat nearby, engrossed in a science project involving baking soda and vinegar. The atmosphere in the house had undergone a transformation. It felt brighter, lighter, infused with a newfound sense of peace. Kayla Bennett had rearranged the furniture, painted the walls in warm, inviting colors, and truly made it her own. She had secured a position at an environmental consulting firm, finally putting her degree to use and building the career she had put aside for so long. The children were sporting new winter coats and proper boots, not because I had purchased them out of pity, but because Kayla Bennett had, using her own hard-earned money, taking pride in every purchase, every decision she made for her family. "Grandpa," Noah Carter said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Can you explain this math problem? It's got me stumped." "Let's look at it together," I replied, pulling the worksheet closer. We worked through it, not doing it for him, but guiding him, offering gentle nudges, until he arrived at the answer himself. The look of satisfaction on his face was priceless. Kayla Bennett came home at 5:30, a tired but happy smile gracing her lips as she took in the scene at the table. "How was work?" I asked. "Good. Really good," she replied, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "I'm working on a watershed restoration project, putting my degree to use finally. It feels amazing. That's wonderful, Kayla. I'm so proud of you." After dinner, after the children had retreated to their rooms to play, Kayla Bennett and I sat at the table with steaming mugs of tea. The silence was comfortable, companionable. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice thoughtful, "about everything that happened. The lies, the betrayal. Part of me wishes you'd told me sooner. About the money, about what you knew all along. I understand that, but another part understands why you didn't. I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have defended him, made excuses, told you it was fine, that it wasn't that bad. Maybe," she conceded with a sigh. "Dad, did you ever worry you went too far, setting up that whole thing at his office? The sting operation, the public humiliation?" I considered the question carefully, weighing my words. "Yes. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled it differently, found a more subtle approach. But Eric Dunham needed to face consequences publicly. A private confrontation wouldn't have changed his behavior. It would have just allowed him to continue his charade. It was humiliating for him, no doubt. It was. And that troubles me. But Kayla Bennett, he was humiliating you privately every day, chipping away at your confidence, making you feel small, making you question your worth. Sometimes breaking one person's pride is necessary to restore another person's dignity." She nodded slowly, absorbing my words. "I've been thinking about Mom, what she would have said about all this. Your mother would have been proud of you for leaving, for rebuilding your life, for protecting her grandchildren. She never tolerated disrespect of any kind. She would have hit him with a frying pan. Probably," I added with a wry smile. We both laughed then, a genuine, heartfelt laugh. The first real laugh I'd heard from her in years. "The children seem happier," I observed, watching them through the doorway as they played. "They are. It's strange. They miss Eric Dunham, but they're lighter, less tense. They don't walk on eggshells anymore. They can just be kids." "That's good, Kayla. That's really good. Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "The $15 million at Thornhill Capital, is that real, or was it just for show, part of the act?" "It's real. Properly invested, diversified portfolio, quarterly reviews. Why keep it there? Why not move it after everything, after what he did?" "Because Gregory Thornhill runs a good firm, and they've consistently delivered solid returns. And because Eric Dunham no longer works there to feel uncomfortable, why let his mistakes dictate my financial decisions? I'm not going to cut off my nose to spite my face." She smiled, a knowing smile. "That's very practical of you, Dad." "I'm a practical man, Kayla. Always have been." Later, driving home to Burlington, I reflected on the past 4 months. The investigation, the confrontation, the divorce, and the rebuilding. Had I overstepped? Perhaps. Could I have managed things more delicately? Possibly. But Kayla Bennett had gained her freedom, a freedom long overdue. The children were well cared for, thriving in a stable and loving environment, and Eric Dunham was finally dealing with the ramifications of his actions, facing the consequences of his choices. Sometimes justice can resemble revenge, and sometimes it is revenge, plain and simple. The distinction lies in the intention, the underlying motivation. My aim was protection. My method was exposure. I could accept that. I could live with that, Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and reviewed my account balance, which showed over $28 million and continuing to grow through investments. It was more money than I would ever need, more than I ever imagined having. I created a new document titled Education Trust Fund, Noah Carter and Lily Parker Grant Lawson, and started to research trust structures, tax implications, and eligible educational expenses. The money wasn't the ultimate goal, but it was a valuable tool, a means to secure their future, to provide them with opportunities I never had, and I intended to use it wisely to make a lasting impact on their lives. Before going to bed, I received a text message from Kayla Bennett. "Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I probably deserved it. I love you, Dad." I replied, "I love you too, sweetheart. Always." Then I set the phone down, a sense of contentment washing over me. Justice served, family restored, future secured, task complete. A quiet smile played on my lips as I drifted off to sleep. End of story.